Coming home from the store earlier today, I thought to myself, well, what if I walk up the front steps and he's sitting on the porch swing there, and look over, and of course he's not there. And then I walk through the front door, and I have this tiny little thought of, well, what if I happen to look over at the couch and he's there, and of course he's not there. And, the feeling was starting to fade, and I walked into the kitchen, and I'm like thinking, well, of course I know he's not going to be there, and of course he wasn't there. And by the time I put away the few little groceries that I bought and came back to the bedroom, it had passed, and I thought, well, why would I come up with such a perverse, it's like something out of a horror movie, because it would have been like that he let me go through everything that I went through, as horrible as it was, and him still alive, so that he could have been off doing who knows what for, 58 days, 59 days. And I thought to myself, gosh, why would I even entertain such a thought? It was almost kind of morbid. And then I found myself later doing something that I have done a few different times, and that is going to some of our last disagreements and almost like I'm wanting to rehash them, like I'm wanting to say, well, you said this would be the case, and then it ended up being like this, or whatever, like it's going to change or something. And I ended up realizing at some point that was silly too, and why was I going over something that I'd gone over, a few times a week, I guess, in the first few weeks after he died, and I sort of had a sort of half realization before, and it finally bubbled up to the top. It's so that I can feel closer to him, because if I could have a conversation with him, then he's not really gone. If I could resolve something that we had going on, well then, same thing, I guess. Basically, it's sort of a way of me keeping him currently as a part of my life when he's clearly not here. And I'm having, now instead of episodes of where I'm like falling into like deep mourning and weeping and whatnot, and then periods of calm, instead now it's sort of periods of wanting to try to hold on to him as a current part of my life, a permanent part of me, versus realizing that however much of a part of me he is, because of the changes that happened in my life, and all of the things that I know because of him, all of that, there's the realization that he isn't here. He's never going to be back here again. Every once in a while I'll say something to Alistair about, to remind him of Craig. I've tried to show him his picture. He doesn't seem to really be interested, or really to look at it and think, well, I don't really know what he thinks, of course, but and I've played some of his voice on the phone. And just like when he was alive, Alistair doesn't really pay that much attention to it. It doesn't seem relevant to him for whatever reason. So, but obviously I'm not doing that probably for the sake of the dog. I'm probably doing that more for my sake, because again, keeping his memory alive for Alistair and Rosie is a way of keeping him a current part of my life. And some of it I've realized is not unhealthy. Like, I've got a picture of us that's in the kitchen now. It was in the study up on a bookshelf, and I didn't really care for it when it was first done. But it's, us, and you can see from my expression on my face, leaned all into him, you can see where I'm at. And with him, his face is a little maybe hard to read, but, it just looks pleasant. And like he's happy to be there and happy to be there with me. And so I can look at that, and it's the sort of the opposite of a trigger. Instead of it feeling like, well, like if I find something in the freezer that I know that we bought that we meant to have, and he's not here, I turn around, and he's not in the room. But with the picture, I'm looking at it, and yeah, he's not here, he's not in the room, but I'm seeing that familiar face. So, and if I decide to try to talk through something and I'm looking at his picture, and his picture's calm, not angry and whatever like that, then it tends to not trigger me being super upset. It's sort of like a thing of, it's almost like when you're a kid and you have an imaginary friend and you just talk to that friend and pretend that that friend is hearing you and has a personality and is thinking and all that. Only in this case, I knew him. I know what his personality was like. I know how he would act and react and the things he would say. And I can even change how I feel he might be reacting now based on my understanding of the fact that he had had a little bit of brain damage from his liver issues and a little bit of his mental illness. And, if he was in his right mind without all that going on, he would have done things differently while he was alive, and he would probably be apologetic, and he would probably be more, all of the good things about him would have been more emphasized. No, that's not to say that some of the bad things couldn't be either, but he's gone. So it sort of comes down to what I'm choosing to believe out of his personality. And what I may be doing, there's people who have said, oh, well, the dead can do no wrong. There's people where someone will die and to hear them talk, the person was a saint. Whereas if you knew the person, you knew that the person was not a saint. Same thing goes here, only I'm trying really hard not to over-rationalize and forgive things that shouldn't be forgiven, because God forbid I should ever get into another relationship where I put so much of myself out, put so much on the line and have it bite me on the ass repeatedly and just keep my ass hanging out. People who are a little bit crispier than I am, maybe a little bit more jaded by life, a little bit more realistic, will say things like, well, the person only gets, one chance with me or two chances with me, or if I see a red flag or if I see a red flashing light. People express it differently, but same idea. The first time I get an idea that the person is doing X, whatever it is, cheating or taking money and spending it on something ridiculous or developing an addiction or whatever, a lot of these people are like, then it would be done. And I understand that, and way back at the beginning of things, maybe it should have been done. But after you stay so long, if the person has made changes, has become better, a different person, and you can see, like with my husband, he wanted to be a better person. He really did put himself out for other people a lot. Now, I wanted him to put himself out more for me so that our situation would be more stable and, so that we would be happier, because he would complain about us not being able to do this or afford that or, go here or there or whatever. And I was like, why are you complaining to me like it's my fault? You're the one who spent money on this car over here or, helped out X, Y, and Z with different things, knowing that we had bills coming up. And then, of course, in the end, it was, why are you upset with me that we don't have cable? You're the one that's taking our bill money and spending it on other stuff. Other stuff. So, and again, I'm doing it right now. Me bringing up that stuff is it's trying to pull him forward from that moment where I felt like he was stuck, where he was dead, and I couldn't think about these things anymore because I couldn't actually talk to him, and I'm doing it anyway, as though he's still around, as though they're going to be able to be resolved somehow. And they're not. So I guess that's sort of my thing for future widowers and widows to look out for is your mind will try to keep certain things going, not because you're going to get them resolved. See, when the person's alive, you may return to certain issues like, certain money issues or whatever because there's a chance they can be resolved, and if they're important, they need to be. And it's the most important issues that you have when the person dies that are not resolved that will keep coming to your mind until you can put them to rest somehow. And that's the most difficult thing. It's the types of things that people will say like, oh, I never got to tell the person that I loved him. Well, he knew that I loved him. In my case, it's more, I never really got him to give me the acknowledgement that I felt like I needed of his love for me. So, but it's one of those things you sort of have to chalk up to. It's not necessarily a vain regret because it's not necessarily anything you did. But the lesson that can be learned from that is try not to let things linger. While you all are both still alive, try to get stuff resolved. If someone has an addiction problem, and you're afraid to say anything because you're afraid you'll get them in trouble with their doctor, or you're afraid that maybe they'll lose their pain clinic access or whatever like that, there are ways of talking to people and of getting things resolved. Don't be afraid to try. I was afraid to try. And now, if I tried to have Craig committed and had him locked up, even for his own good, because he was a harm to himself and others, the stress of trying to do that might have killed him because of his heart condition. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't, under some circumstances, and everybody's circumstances are different. But just be aware that it will be harder on you if you have unresolved issues, and you will find yourself trying to resolve them after the person's dead, and you may even find yourself thinking, well, what if they're really not? So, on that, have a good night.